A powerful man is his own law. A weak girl is just a witness. And what I saw in that alley was enough to get me killed. I was supposed to be in my room, safe from the world, but my sister Gabriella's suffocating love had pushed me out into the rain. I just wanted to breathe. Now I could not breathe at all. Stay with me, and I will show you how a moment of foolish freedom can cost you everything. My thin white dress was useless against the Naples storm, clinging to my skin like a second, colder skin. I was exhausted from my own fear, alone in a stinking alley with monsters. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic prisoner. I had chased a stray cat here, a stupid, sentimental impulse that reminded me of a life before our parents died, before I became a burden. Then I heard the sickening crack of bone and a man's tortured groan. I saw a ruined face, a lit cigarette pressed into his forehead, and a raw scream that echoed in my soul. I tried to run. I should have run faster. A mountain of a man with dead eyes grabbed my arm. His grip was iron. "Boss," he said, "we have a witness." And the devil himself turned to look at me. His name was Dario Santo, a name whispered across the city with fear and respect. He was a legend built on 35 years of brilliant cruelty. The man he had just broken, Carmine, was a thief. This was Dario's justice. He moved toward me, not with anger, but with the lethal grace of a panther. I expected a gun. I expected the end. Instead, he stopped so close I could smell the sharp citrus and danger on his skin. He lifted my chin with one finger. The touch was a shock, a brand of heat on my frozen skin. "You are trembling, little flower," he murmured, a smirk playing on his perfect lips. His voice was dark velvet. "Are you cold, or just scared?" "Both," I whispered. "He did not kill me." He looked at me. His gaze was so intense it felt like he was stripping away every layer until he saw my terrified heart. He saw a system of power I never knew existed. A world where men like Carmine steal from men like Dario, and the punishment is swift and final. A world with no police, no laws, only powerful men and their rules. In this world, there was no one to save me. This was the system. I had stumbled into a place where my life was worthless. "Please, I will not say anything," I begged. The lie was pathetic in the face of his power. He knew. "You saw it all," he said, his voice soft but absolute. "That is a problem." He took my phone, severing my only tie to my world and to Gabriella. His man, Marco, stood like a stone guard. "Then you will get into my car," Dario commanded. "We are going to have a talk." When I hesitated, he glanced at the bleeding man on the ground. Then his eyes came back to me. His smirk turned to ice. "Or Marco will convince you." The choice was not a choice. My life was already over. It just had a new owner. "No," I whispered. With his hand on the small of my back, a gesture of pure possession, he led me to a black Mercedes. The heat of his touch burned through my dress, a terrifying promise. I sank into the leather, a prisoner in a luxury cage. This was his controlled revenge, his justice for my crime of seeing the truth. But as he slid in beside me, his leg pressing against mine, he leaned close. "Do not be scared, little flower," he whispered into my ear. His words offered no comfort. They were a threat. True power does not need to shout. It protects its own secrets. And I was his secret now. Justice in this city belonged to the cruel and the beautiful, and I was in the hands of a man who was both. "For you, I will change every single rule." In that moment, I understood something much worse than death. My life was not finished. It had been sold to the devil, and God forgive me, a small piece of me was desperate to know the cost. If you feel the same dangerous pull of Dario's world, if you need to know what happens to Ravenna, then you must subscribe. The story from this point forward becomes far more intense, and you will not want to miss even a second. The air inside the vehicle was thick with the scent of expensive leather and raw authority. Dario remained quiet as his driver moved through the city streets slick with rain. He only watched me with an intense focus, as if I were a difficult puzzle he was about to solve. I dropped my gaze to my lap, trying to steady my breathing. It was impossible. We arrived at a skyscraper that looked as if it were made of shadows and glass. It rose above the harbor like a dark, jagged crown. "This is my home," Dario announced. His tone made the words sound like a life sentence. Marco opened my door. I knew I had no choice but to obey. I followed Dario into the building. The lobby was a cold expanse of marble and intimidation. Men in expensive suits who served as security gave a nod as Dario passed. The receptionist at the front desk intentionally looked away. In this place, everyone knew the structure of power. I was about to learn my place in it. The elevator ascent to the top floor felt like being buried alive. Dario stood uncomfortably close, his presence consuming all the air in the confined space. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I could hear his calm, steady breathing while my own was short and panicked. "Relax," he said softly. "I do not bite, unless you want me to." Heat rushed into my cheeks. The elevator doors slid open to a massive penthouse that looked like it was designed by sin itself. Walls of glass displayed the entire Bay of Naples, the city lights like scattered jewels on black velvet. The furniture was all dark wood and black leather. The art on the walls was worth a fortune. "Sit," Dario commanded, gesturing to a couch. I did as I was told. He poured an amber liquid from a heavy crystal bottle into 2 glasses. "I do not drink," I said in a quiet voice. "Tonight, you do." He pushed the glass into my hand. "It will help you calm down." I took a tiny sip. It was whiskey. The liquid left a trail of fire down my throat, but he was correct. It did help. Dario settled into a large chair across from me, his posture one of absolute control, and he just watched me. "Well," he finally started. "Ravenna Fior, 23 years old. You reside with your sister, Gabriella, in a villa just outside the city. Your parents died in a car accident 7 years ago. You work at a bookstore. You like poetry. You have never had a boyfriend." All the blood in my body turned to ice. How could you possibly know that? "In my city, I know everything about everyone." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "But you are different. You do not belong to a rival family. You have no ties to my world. Which leaves only one question. What were you doing in the alley behind my club?" "I told you. I was following a cat." "The truth, Ravenna." His voice dropped to a low growl, a sound that set every nerve in my body on fire with alarm. "That is the truth." My voice was small and trembling. "I know it sounds unbelievable, but I swear, I believe you." I stared at him. "What?" "I believe you." He leaned forward in his chair, putting his elbows on his knees. "That is what makes this so ideal. You stumbled into my world by complete accident. You saw something you were never meant to see. And now you are here in my home, drinking my whiskey, and not a single person on earth knows where you are." The complete gravity of my predicament crashed down on me then. "My sister, Gabriella, will come looking for me." "Will she?" Dario held up his phone. It was my phone. He turned the screen toward me. It showed a text message that had been sent to Gabriella from my number. It told her not to wait up for me because I was staying over with a friend. "You cannot do this." "I can. And I already have." He placed the phone on the table. "As of this moment, Ravenna, you no longer exist in your old world. Your life is now here with me, and I will be the one to decide what your new life will look like. What are my options?" The words sounded far braver than I felt. His smirk returned. "I like that spirit. Let us consider. Option 1. I allow you to walk away. You give me your promise that you will forget tonight ever happened, but that would require me to trust you not to go to the police. You would not speak to a single soul. You would not become a liability. And to be perfectly clear, little flower, I am not a trusting man. Option 2 is that you stay here. The word hung in the air like a heavy weight. Stay, I repeated. And be what? A prisoner. Be mine. My heart slammed against my ribs, stumbled, and then began to beat wildly. I do not understand. Are you certain? He rose and moved toward me with the smooth grace of a predator. You walked into my life at the exact moment I was seeking a change. For someone who is not a part of this world. Someone I can shape. Someone pure. He knelt in front of me, his eyes now level with mine. Someone I can be the first to touch. A wave of heat spread across my skin. It was fear, but it was mixed with something else. Something I refused to acknowledge. I am not interested, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Liar. His hand came up to rest on my knee. The touch was gentle, yet it felt like a searing brand. Your body is telling me a different story. Your pupils are dilated. Your breathing is rapid and shallow. You are terrified, yes, but you are also curious. You are insane. I am a powerful man. There is a difference. His hand slid higher up my thigh. Not much, but enough to make his point. This is my offer to you, Raveena. I need a companion for social events, for business dinners, for gatherings where a beautiful, innocent woman by my side sends a message to my enemies. I am not an object. No, you are an asset, and I always protect my assets. His gaze locked with mine. Your sister. She is having difficulties, is she not? The medical bills from your mother's last days. The house is 3 months away from foreclosure. You work yourself to exhaustion at that bookstore, but it is never enough. How could he know about Gabriella's problems? About any of it? I can make all of that go away, Dario said. A single phone call. Your sister will be free of her debt. Your financial problems will be over. The only thing you have to do is agree. And if I refuse? His hand left my leg. He stood up and walked over to the window. Then you will leave this place tonight. And by tomorrow, the people Gabriella owes money to will become aggressive. The bookshop where you work could face some unforeseen problems. Your simple, safe life is about to get very complicated. You are making threats against my family. I am just showing you how the world truly works. He turned, a dark silhouette against the glow of the city, like an angel of retribution. This world is not a kind place, Raveena. I am giving you the chance for a fortress, for security, and a life of wealth you cannot even imagine. All I want in return is your time, your presence, and your compliance. For how much time? For as long as I say our deal lasts. It was an exquisite trap, a gilded cage. But then I saw Gabby's face in my mind, the stacks of unpaid bills, the exhausted expression she carried every morning. I spoke. I need some time to think about this. You have 60 seconds. That is not reasonable. I have never claimed to be a reasonable man. 50 seconds. My mind was a whirlwind of chaos. This was not happening. It was absolute insanity. I had to get away, to find someone to help. I thought of Gabby, of all she had done for me, of the fear in her voice when the debt collectors would call. If I agree, my own voice said, I will need your word. You will not ever harm my sister. You have it. And I will not. The words stuck in my throat. Get into your bed. His smile was that of a predator. Only if you plead for it. My cheeks burned with humiliation. That will never, ever happen. We will find out. He stepped closer, extending his hand. Do we have a deal, Ravenna Fior? I stared at his hand, strong and scarred, carrying a history of violence I could sense but not see. This was the point of no return, the choice that would change everything. I placed my hand in his. We have a deal. His grip tightened on mine, and I thought I could hear a lock clicking shut. Welcome to my life, little flower, Dario murmured, pulling me to my feet. I promise you things will never be the same. He was right. My God, he was so right. I came to in a bed softer than any cloud and 1,000 times more dangerous. For a moment, I had no idea where I was. Then the memories rushed back in. The deal, this penthouse apartment, the devil with eyes of obsidian who now owned me. I bolted upright, my heart hammering. The room was enormous, all shades of gray and black, filled with art that found elegance in cruelty. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city of Naples waking up below. The early sun made the bay shine like liquid gold. A note lay on the bedside table, covered in sharp, confident script. "Your wardrobe is in the closet. Breakfast will be at 8. Do not force me to come find you. D." I checked my phone. 7:47. I had 13 minutes left. The walk-in closet was the size of my old bedroom and was filled to capacity. There were designer dresses, casual wear, and shoes that cost more than I made in 6 months. Every single item was my size. He had planned for this. He was certain I would take his offer. His arrogance should have made me furious. Instead, a cold dread trickled down my spine. I chose the plainest things I could find, a pair of black pants and a silk blouse the color of cream, and made myself presentable. The reflection in the mirror was a stranger, a woman who belonged in this world of money and dangerous men. I hated how sophisticated I appeared. At 8 o'clock exactly, I found my way to the dining room. Dario sat at the head of a table that could seat 12 people, focused on a tablet. He didn't glance up. "Sit." I took the seat to his right. Dishes began to arrive as if from nowhere. There were pastries, fresh fruits, espresso, and foods I had never seen before. A woman in a crisp uniform set everything down and then vanished without a sound. "Eat," Dario commanded, his attention still on the device. "I do not have an appetite. You will eat. We have a full day planned." "Doing what?" He finally lifted his gaze. God, his eyes were piercing. "I am showing you your new life." He rose, buttoned his perfectly fitted charcoal gray suit jacket, and offered me his hand. "Come." As we rode the elevator down to the garage, I was able to speak. "I need to phone my sister. She will be getting worried. It has been handled. I sent Marco to give her a message. You are away in Rome for a few days to see a friend. She thinks you are finally taking her advice to live a little. You can't just do that, I can." And I did. The doors opened onto a garage that looked like a showroom for luxury cars. He led me toward a sleek black Maserati. "Get in." "Where are we going?" "We are going to buy you some things." "I do not need anything." "Yes, you do." He held my door, and when I was inside, he shut it with a heavy thud that felt like a final sentence. The drive across Naples was surreal. Dario drove like he lived, fast and with total self-assurance, daring anyone to challenge him. I gripped the seat, trying to conceal my nervousness. "Calm down," he said, with a hint of amusement in his voice. "I have never been in a crash. There is always a first time. Not for me." We pulled up to a boutique that clearly catered to the ultra-rich. The staff greeted Dario by name, their eyes sliding over to me with undisguised interest. "This is Ravenna," Dario announced, placing his hand on the small of my back in a clear show of possession. "She needs an entirely new wardrobe. Dresses, casual clothing, jewelry. The price is irrelevant." Of course. They understood perfectly. For the next 2 hours, I was a living doll, measured, clothed, and reclothed. Dario sat back in a leather chair, sipping espresso and watching the entire spectacle with his sharp, calculating eyes. I stepped out in a black evening gown that highlighted every curve, and his gaze grew sharp. He commanded, "That one," then pointed, "and the red one, and the emerald one." I protested, "This is far too much." He countered, "Nothing is excessive for what is mine." He rose and crossed the room to stand before me. The store employees suddenly became very busy elsewhere. "You will be seen with me in public, Ravenna, at dinners, galas, and important meetings. You must look the part." "The part of what?" The question escaped my lips. "Your property." Dario's hand moved like lightning, grasping my chin. The pressure was not enough to hurt, but it was firm enough to send a clear message. Do not ever speak of yourself that way again. You are not my property. You are under my protection. There is a profound difference. Is there? I challenged. Yes. His thumb traced my bottom lip gently. If you were my property, I would have already taken you. But with you, I am being patient. A storm of heat, rage, and a much darker emotion swirled inside me. I pulled away from his touch. I am not some plaything. No, you are a weapon. He moved closer, pinning me against the large mirror. And I am going to teach you how to use yourself. I whispered, I do not understand. You will. His warm breath ghosted over my ear. Tonight, you will join me for a business dinner. There will be important men there, dangerous men. Your only job is to sit beside me, look exquisite, and stay silent. He asked if I could do that. My pride screamed no. The instinct to survive forced me to agree. Good girl. He stepped away, and the spell was broken. We are buying all of it. Send everything to my home. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. We went to a jeweler, where Dario covered me in diamonds as if I were a doll he was decorating. After that, we went to a salon. They transformed my hair and my makeup until I saw a stranger in the mirror, a woman who held power. I was utterly drained when we returned to his penthouse. Rest, Dario instructed. We leave at 7. I went to my room. It was starting to feel like my space, a place I belonged. I collapsed onto the bed. What had I done? I sold myself to a monster to free my sister. I traded my quiet existence for this new reality. I was supposed to feel like a captive. But then I saw my reflection in the dark glass of the window. The clothes I wore cost more than my rent for several months. My skin tingled where he had touched me. A new feeling began to stir inside of me. Alive. For the first time in 7 years of suffering and struggle, I felt truly alive. And that feeling scared me more than anything. Leave your thoughts. If you had walked into Dario's world instead of Ravenna, would you have accepted his deal? Or would you have run? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. The restaurant was the kind of establishment that did not list prices on the menu. If you had to ask how much something cost, you did not belong there. We arrived in Dario's Maserati. I could feel the stares, the valet, the men at the door, the other diners. They all watched as Dario got out and then helped me from the car. His hand settled on my waist, a gesture that felt like he was marking his territory. I wore the emerald dress. It made my eyes look like a stormy sea and gave my skin a soft glow. Dario had chosen it himself. He had studied me in it in a way that made me feel completely exposed, even while fully clothed. Remember, he murmured as we entered, tonight, you belong to me. So act the part. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. It means you do not pull away when I touch you. You listen when I speak. His hold on my waist became tighter. When other men look at you, you look only at me. I had no chance to reply before we were guided to a private room in the back. 3 men were already seated. They were all older than Dario. They all wore suits that were worth a fortune and had expressions hardened by years of doing terrible things. Dario, the man at the head of the table said, getting to his feet. He had silver hair, sharp eyes, and a smile that was completely empty. You are late. I am perfectly on time, Vincenzo. Dario pulled out a chair for me, then sat down. The traffic was difficult. Vincenzo glanced at me. And who is this beautiful little thing? Ravenna Fior, my associate. The way Dario pronounced the word made its meaning unmistakable. I was his. The matter was closed. Charming. Vincenzo's empty smile grew wider. I did not know you were searching for an associate. I was not until I realized exactly what I was missing. The air in the room was dense enough to be cut with a steak knife. The other 2 men gave their names, Carlo and Stefano. Both of them had the same dangerous quality that all the men in this world seemed to share. I offered a polite smile. I remained silent. I focused on just breathing. They served dinner. It was some kind of fancy French food I could not put a name to. The men talked around me, their words a mix of small talk that hid their real business. They spoke of things like shipments and territories, and people who had gone missing. I barely ate. I felt Dario's presence next to me. His leg was pressed against mine under the table. His hand would sometimes come to rest on my thigh. The touch was casual, but also possessive. "So, tell me, Dario," Vincenzo said, though he was looking directly at me. "Where did you find such an innocent girl? She looked so pure." That word felt like a slap. Dario's hand squeezed my thigh. "Ravenna is with me now. I would not want anyone to forget that." "Of course. Of course." Vincenzo raised his glass of wine. "But you must admit, she is very different from the women you typically choose." "My choices have changed." "Have they? Or did you just find yourself a new plaything?" The insult was just left hanging there in the air. I felt Dario become completely still beside me. It was not a calm stillness. It was the stillness of a predator. He possessed the quiet of a hunter just before the kill. Dario's voice was low. "Be careful, old friend. The things you are saying are starting to get on my nerves." "Are they now?" Vincenzo's smile twisted into a nasty curl of his lip. "I apologize. I am simply trying to understand why a man who ignores every rule would suddenly parade a girl around as if she matters. Unless," his eyes held a dangerous glint, "unless she is something more. Tell me, Dario, what is her family's name? What influence does she command?" "None." The single word silenced the entire room. Absolutely none. Carlo's posture straightened. "Then what good is she?" I could feel every one of them staring at me. They looked at me like prey that was about to be devoured. Dario's hand slid from my leg and found mine. He laced his fingers through my own, right there on top of the table. It was a clear declaration. "Mine." "Her use," Dario said, his tone becoming deep and menacing, "is precisely what I decided is. The same as everything else in this city." Vincenzo forced a laugh, but it had no humor in it. "You are still so arrogant. Your father would be so impressed. My father is dead and buried." Dario's voice was so cold it could burn. "And I am nothing like him. That is the reason I sit at this table while he decomposes in a box." The mood in the room shifted instantly. All three men went rigid. "We meant no offense," Stefano said. It was the first time he had spoken. "We are only curious about the new path your life is taking. My life is my business." Dario rose to his feet, pulling me up along with him. "This dinner is over. Our business arrangement has ended, Vincenzo. I will seek out new partners. Partners who understand their place." "Wait, Dario. Please." Vincenzo stood up, and I could see genuine fear in his eyes. "I am sorry. I crossed a line. Please, sit down. We can discuss this. There is nothing left to discuss." Dario's arm wrapped around my waist. "You showed disrespect to what is mine. That is something I cannot forgive." He guided me toward the door. As we passed Vincenzo, Dario paused. "One final thing," he whispered. "If I ever hear Ravenna's name from your mouth again, if you so much as think of her for any purpose but to stay away, I will cut out your tongue and mail it to your wife. Do you understand me?" Vincenzo's face went white. "Perfectly. Good." We were gone. The car ride to the penthouse was completely silent. Dario's jaw was a hard line, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. I was too terrified to speak a single word. But then we reached the penthouse. The elevator doors closed, sealing us in that tiny space, and I finally found my voice. "You did not have to do that for me." "Yes, I did." He turned to face me, and the intensity in his eyes stole the air from my lungs. "No one disrespects you. Not now, not ever. I do not give a damn who they are. They were your business associates. They are nothing to me now. He stepped closer. You need to understand something, Ravina. When I say you are mine, it is not a game. I do not say things I do not mean. You are now under my protection. That means if anyone hurts you, speaks a harsh word to you, or even gives you a wrong look, they will answer to me. Why? The question escaped me. Why would you even care? I am just what? His hand came up to gently cup my face. Do you think you are worthless? Do you think I would destroy alliances that took years to form for no good reason? I do not understand. Then let me make you understand. He kissed me. The kiss was not gentle. It was not tender. It was a kiss of possession, of raw hunger. His mouth came down on mine as if to mark me as his property from the inside out. I should have pushed him away. I should have remembered this was all an arrangement, a lie. But my own body betrayed me. My hands fisted in his jacket, my lips parted to meet his, and a groan rumbled from his chest against my mouth, a sound that vibrated through my whole being. The elevator chimed. We pulled apart. Dario's eyes were like molten gold. Get inside. Now. I did what he told me. Once inside the apartment, he poured himself a drink, his hands unsteady. I had never seen him lose his perfect composure. That was a mistake, he said. He would not meet my gaze. No, I replied. It was not. But it is done. Yes. He finally looked at me. Go to your room, Ravenna, before I do something we will both regret. I fled. But as I lay in my bed that night, my lips still felt the fire from his kiss. My body still ached for his touch. And I finally knew the truth. I was no longer a captive in Daario's world. I was drowning in it. And I was not sure I wanted anyone to rescue me. For 3 days I lived in a haze. Daario was different after that kiss. He was more distant. He would leave before I was awake and return late at night. He spoke to me only when necessary, telling me where I needed to be. A part of me was relieved. The other part, the part I hated, missed his presence. On the 4th day, everything shattered. I was jolted awake by shouting. It was Dario's voice, thick with rage, coming from the other side of the penthouse. I slipped on a robe and followed the sound. He was in his office, pacing like a caged tiger with a phone pressed to his ear. I do not care what it takes, he snarled into the phone. Find him, and I want him brought to me alive. He paused for a moment. Because I want to be the one who finishes him, Marco. That is why. He slammed the phone down, and then he noticed me in the doorway. What are you doing up? You were yelling. What is wrong? It is nothing you need to be concerned about. But I could see it in his eyes. Something was terribly wrong. Dario, I began. This is not your concern. He came toward me, and I saw something on his face I had never seen before. It was fear. But it was not for himself. The fear was for me. Please, I whispered. Just tell me who. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity. The name seemed to tear itself from his chest. Nico Esposito. He is a rival, and he knows about you. My heart froze in my chest. How? I made a grave error. Daario's hands clenched into tight fists. I took you to that dinner. I showed everyone how important you are to me. Now Nico thinks he can destroy me by destroying you. What does that mean for me? It means you are in danger. He stopped directly in front of me. It means I need to move you from here, to a secure location, a place where he will never be able to reach you. No, this is not a discussion. I said no. I stood my ground. You are the one who dragged me into this world. You do not get to push me away just because it became dangerous. Dangerous? He laughed, but the sound was hollow. Ravenna, if Nico gets his hands on you, what he will do. He could not finish the thought. I will not allow that to happen. Then do not force me to go. Protect me here. You promised you would. You gave me your word. I am not able to protect you from this. The admission hung in the space between us like a physical weight. I am afraid too, I said, my voice barely audible. But running away will not fix anything. If his plan is to use me to get to you, he will find a way. At least here with you, I stand a chance. Dario's jaw went rigid. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you should be with someone who deserves it. We held each other's gaze for a long moment. The air crackled with tension and unspoken words. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his whole demeanor shifted. Stay here. Under no circumstances are you to leave this penthouse. Marco is posted right outside your door. If something happens, you go with him. Is that clear? Where are you headed? To finish this. He was gone before I could even reply. The hours crawled by. I drifted through the penthouse like a ghost, tracking the sun's slow arc across the sky. Marco stood guard outside, a silent, immovable protector. I tried to eat, but my stomach refused. I tried to read, but the words on the page were a meaningless jumble. My mind was consumed with Dario, wondering where he was, what he was doing, and if he was safe. When had I started caring about his well-being? The sun had started its descent when the front door burst open. Dario strode in, and my heart stopped. His shirt was covered in blood. It was on his hands. It was smeared on his face. But he moved with strength and purpose, which told me the blood was not his. It is done, Dario said. His voice was flat and empty. Nico is handled. His organization is handled. The threat is gone. A wave of pure relief crashed over me. Thank God. No. He held up a hand to silence me. Do not thank God. Thank the fact that I put a bullet in his skull and watched the life empty out of him on a warehouse floor. That image should have horrified me. It should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself walking toward him. You are injured, I said, seeing a cut on his cheek for the first time. It is nothing. Let me clean it. Ravina, please. Something in my tone made him surrender. Inside his bathroom of black marble and polished chrome, I wet a cloth and gently dabbed the wound. We were so close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my cheek. You have no right to be this near me, Dario whispered. Not when I look like this. Like what? Covered in blood after taking a man's life. I am a monster, Ravina. You should be terrified of me. I am, I admitted. But it is not you that I am afraid of. His eyes locked onto mine. Then you are a fool. Maybe. I guided the cloth along his jawline, wiping away the flecks of red. Or maybe I see something you refuse to acknowledge. And what would that be? A man who killed someone to keep me safe. I killed to protect my own assets. Liar. The word escaped me in a soft exhale. You were afraid. I saw it this morning. You were afraid for me. His hand shot out like a snake, his fingers wrapping around my wrist. Do not confuse protection with affection. Then why are your hands shaking? It was barely noticeable. But it was there. The tremor from the adrenaline, the weight of what he had done, the fear he had carried all day. Ravina, he said my name like a final warning. You need to leave this bathroom right now. Why? Because I am holding on by a single thread, and if you stay here, if you keep looking at me like that. Like what? Like you do not hate me for what I am. I set the cloth down and placed my hand on his chest, feeling the wild hammering of his heart beneath the ruined shirt. I should hate you, I whispered. You blackmailed me. You trapped me. You turned my whole world upside down. Yes, you should, but I do not. The thread snapped. Dario pulled me against him with a guttural sound, his mouth crashing down onto mine. This was nothing like the kiss in the elevator. This was raw and desperate, as if he wanted to devour me whole. I surrendered to it, the taste of blood and danger mixing with a feeling that was terrifyingly close to need. His hands were everywhere, in my hair, around my waist, then sliding down to grip my hips and press me hard against his body. I could feel every tense muscle, the undeniable proof of his desire against my stomach. "Tell me to stop," he gasped against my mouth. "For the love of God, Ravina, make me stop." "Number." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes wild. "You do not know what you are asking for." "Then show me." Something broke inside him. He lifted me like I was weightless. He carried me to his bedroom, a space I had never been allowed to enter. It was all dark wood and even darker promises. He laid me down on silk sheets and loomed over me. "Model," his voice was a low rasp. "This is the final choice. Once we cross this line, there is no turning back. You will be mine in every way that matters." I breathed out the truth. "I already am. You sealed that the first night we met. Not like this." His touch traveled down my body, leaving a path of fire in its wake. "I have desired you since I found you trembling in that alley. I have dreamed about this moment. I have dreamed about you every single night." "Then wake up." His lips met mine again. This kiss was different, slower, as if he was memorizing me. His fingers located the tie on my robe, and he hesitated. My voice shook, and I hated it. "I have never done this before," I admitted. "I know." He offered a smile that was genuine and soft, a brief glimpse of the man behind the monster. "I will be gentle with you, at first." The meaning behind his last two words sent a rush of heat through my entire body. He undressed me with a slow, careful reverence, treating me like something priceless. When I stood bare before him, he just looked. "Bellissima," he murmured. "Beautiful. And completely mine." "Yours," I agreed. He shed his own clothes, stained with blood. My God, he was a magnificent sight. He was a sculpture of muscle, marked with ink I had never seen, and scars that told stories of battles he had won. Then he covered my body with his. Our skin met, and the sensation was overwhelming. As he settled between my legs, he whispered, "You tell me if this hurts. I will stop." "Do not stop." I pulled him closer. "Do not ever stop." He moved into me with a slow, aching purpose. His eyes never left my face, watching for any trace of pain. I felt a sharp, burning stretch. It was uncomfortable, but beneath it, something else was building, growing stronger with his every motion. His own breath was ragged. "Breathe," he commanded gently. "Just breathe, little flower." I did as he said. With each breath, each deliberate push, the pain dissolved into pleasure. I gasped his name. "Dario." "I know. I know." He covered my throat, my jaw, and my lips with kisses. "You are perfect. So perfect." His rhythm became faster, driving deeper inside me, and I moved with him, a perfect match. The world outside us disappeared until only we existed. Our bodies, our breathing, the sound of our shared pleasure. When my release came, it felt like death and rebirth in the same instant. I cried out his name, my nails scraping down the skin of his back. He found his own release moments after, breathing my name like a prayer as he collapsed upon me. We stayed tangled together, our hearts hammering, our skins slick with sweat. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my hip. "No going back," Dario said at last. "No," I agreed. "No going back." He pulled me tighter against him. For the first time since my parents died, I felt safe. The thought of finding sanctuary in a killer's embrace should have terrified me. But as I fell asleep in Dario's bed, branded by his touch and possessed by his body, I felt no fear at all. I had stepped into the darkness and found my home. I awoke to an empty bed and a note on the pillow. Had to handle business. "Marco will take you to your sister. She keeps asking about you. Do not let her know what is happening." D. My sister. My God, I had not thought of Gabriella for days. A wave of guilt washed over me. Marco drove me to the villa in complete silence, his scarred face giving nothing away. When we arrived, I saw Gabby in the garden, tending her roses like she did every morning. 2 hours, Marco said. Then we leave. I nodded and stepped out of the car. Ravenna. Gabby's face lit up when she saw me. She rushed over, and her hug smelled like home and everything I had lost. Where have you been? You said a few days. It has been almost a whole week. I know, I'm so sorry. I lost all track of time. She pulled away, her sharp eyes studying my face. You seem different. Different how? I cannot say for sure. Older, maybe, like something fundamental has shifted inside you. Her gaze dropped to my neck, and I knew she saw the dark mark Dario had left there. Ravenna, who is he? Who? Do not play these games with me. There is a man. It is all over your face. She grabbed my hand, and I realized too late that I wore a bracelet that was not there a week ago. It was made of diamonds and emeralds, worth more than our entire house. What is going on, Gabby? I need you to tell me the truth. Now. I could not tell her. Dario's warning echoed in my head. But this was my sister, the person who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who loved me unconditionally. I met someone, I finally said. It is complicated. Complicated? In what way? Ravenna, please. You are scaring me. This is not you, to disappear and then return wearing a fortune in jewels. You look like you have not slept. I am fine. Are you? Is he taking care of you? He is protecting me. Protecting you? Her tone turned sharp. What is that supposed to mean? What kind of trouble are you in? Before I could answer, her phone began to ring. She glanced at the screen and all the color left her face. What? What is it? The bank. They are calling to inform me that our debts have been paid. All of them. The mortgage, the hospital bills, everything. And they will not tell me who paid them. She looked straight at me. Ravenna, what did you do? I made a deal. With whom? I could not say the name. The words were stuck in my throat. Oh God. Gabby sank onto the garden bench. Oh God. Ravenna, tell me you did not do it. Please tell me you did not sell yourself to a rich man. It is not like that. Then what is it? Explain it to me so I can understand. I had to explain why Gabby was staring at me, draped in diamonds, with a look on her face like I had been eaten alive. Because I had been. The words just spilled out. I was consumed, claimed, and marked by him. And I cannot find it in me to be sorry, Gabby. I know I am supposed to be. I know I should despise him for what he did, for trapping me. But I do not. A long, heavy silence passed before she finally spoke in a quiet voice. Who is he? Dario Centuri. The name was a threat that hung in the air between us. The color drained from Gabby's face, leaving it a sickly gray. No, that cannot be right. Please tell me you are making some kind of sick joke. Not Dario Centuri, the Mafia boss they call the rule breaker. Ravenna, do you have any idea what kind of trouble you are in? I saved our family. You were sinking under the weight of that debt. I was handling it. You were working yourself to death, I fired back. I could not just stand there and let that happen. So when he presented his offer, when he promised to make it all vanish, you sold your soul to a monster. Perhaps I did, but this monster keeps his promises. Gabby got to her feet and started pacing, her hands trembling. You have to leave him right now, today. I will figure out a way to handle the money. It is much too late for that. It is never too late. Gabby, I said, taking her hands in mine. I am in love with him. That confession seemed to shock me as much as it did her. You cannot be, she whispered. You have only known him for a single week. I know it sounds insane, but I feel so alive when I am with him. For the first time since our parents died, I feel like I am actually living, not just struggling to survive. He is a killer, Ravenna. I am aware of how dangerous he is. I know he has the power to destroy you. I really do. I looked her straight in the eye. But I think walking away from him would shatter me completely. Gabby looked at me as if I were a stranger. Maybe I was. I cannot support this. Her tone was final. I will not watch you ruin your life for a man like that. I am not asking for your support. I am just asking you to try and understand. I do not. And I never will. She yanked her hands from my grasp. When this ends in disaster, and it will, Ravina, do not run to me for help. Her words cut deeper than any knife. Gabby, I think you should go. Please, just leave now, before I say something I will regret. And so she left. What else could I do? Marco drove me to the penthouse in total silence. I stared out at the city lights as tears streamed down my face. When we arrived, Dario was waiting in the living room. The moment he saw my expression, his own face hardened. What happened? She knows about us. She knows it all. And she despises me for it. She does not despise you. He pulled me into his arms. She is just terrified for you. That is not the same thing. Is it not? Yes. He gently lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. Do you regret any part of this? This thing we have? My mind screamed to say yes, to take the escape he was offering me. Instead, I said, no, I do not regret it. Not after knowing what I am, and especially after knowing what you are. He kissed me then, a touch so soft and gentle, as if he thought I might break. You are far too good for this world, Ravenna Fior. Then it is a good thing I have you to corrupt me. That night, he showed me just how true those words were. Later, as I lay in his arms, feeling branded and owned and entirely his, he murmured something I almost missed. I love you. 3 words that tilted my world on its axis. 3 words that sealed my fate. I whispered them back to him. And in the darkness, I could have sworn I heard the click of chains locking together. Not to trap me, but to bind us to one another for all of time. I want to ask you something. Would you choose a dangerous love over a life of safety and routine? Leave your answer in the comments. Be honest. I was learning that love does not erase the darkness. It just gives you the courage to dance with it. 2 weeks after we confessed our feelings, Dario integrated me more deeply into his world. I sat in business meetings where I learned to recognize the violence that lurked behind a man's eyes. I attended dinners where every smile was a veiled threat. Some nights he came home stained with blood that was not his. And I learned to clean the stains away without asking a single question. I was transforming into someone new, a woman who could stand beside a monster and call him her love. But the past, as I was soon to discover, rarely stays buried. It started with a package that showed up at the penthouse. There were no return markings. Marco, his face grim, brought it to Dario at breakfast. Boss, you need to see this. Dario opened the box and went completely still. Inside lay a single, faded photograph. It was of a young boy, maybe 8 years old, next to a man who was an older version of Dario. Both were smiling, but the man's hand gripped the boy's shoulder with too much force. Who is that? I asked. My father. Dario's voice was like slivers of ice. And me, the day before he tried to end my life. The words struck me like physical blows. What? He set the photo down like it was burning his fingers. I was 8 years old. He decided I was weak, too soft, so he took me to an abandoned warehouse. He beat me until I was barely clinging to life. He said if I could not survive him, I could never survive in this world. A cold dread crept up my spine. How did you escape? I survived. Obviously. His smile was empty of warmth. Marco's father found me, he saved me, and he raised me alongside his own son. The day I turned 18, I went back and found my father. And I made sure he could never hurt anyone again. You killed him. I executed him. To him, the distinction was vital. For what he did to me, to my mother, to every soul he poisoned with his presence. I reached over and took his hand. Why would someone send this to you now? Because someone wants me to remember. They want me to feel powerless. He stood up and began to pace the room. This is a message, a warning, From who? Before he could answer, his phone started to ring. He looked at the screen, and I saw something flicker across his face. It was fear. Model, what is it? He grabbed the phone. After a moment of listening, his face went pale. When? He waited. How many? Another stretch of silence. I am coming now. He hung up, and his eyes, when they met mine, were completely hollow. It is Gabriella. They took her. The world tilted sideways. What? Who has her? When? An hour ago, right from the villa. They left a note. His hands were shaking. They told me to come alone. If I do not, they will end her life. Oh no. Oh no. Gabby, this is my fault. Da'Ario's voice was broken. They used her to get to me. They did this because of you. Because I care about you. Now everyone I love is a target. Then we are going to bring her back. We? He shook his head firmly. No. You will wait here with Marco. You have to be safe. She is my sister. That is precisely why you are not coming. He put his hands on my shoulders. I cannot guarantee I can protect you both. If you were hurt because I was focused on her, I do not care. I am coming with you. Ravina, she is the only family I have left. I refuse to lose her. Tears streamed down my face. Please, Dario, you have to let me come with you. He stared at me for a long time before he finally spoke. Fine. But you will follow every single one of my instructions. Do you understand me? Yes. I mean it. This is not a game. These people, whoever is controlling them, they want me gone for good. They will not hesitate to use both of you to make that happen. I understand. He gave me a quick, hard kiss. If I do not come back, Marco knows to get you away from here. Promise me you will go. Nothing is going to happen to you. Just give me your word. I promise. It was a lie. We both knew it, but he let it stand. The meeting was in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of Naples. It was a place of rusted metal and broken windows that had been empty for years. Dario took 4 of his men. Marco was there, along with 3 others I knew from the penthouse. They were armed, skilled, and completely loyal. But once we arrived, Dario ordered them to wait outside. If this goes wrong, he told Marco, you get Ravenna out of here. That is a direct order, no matter what happens. We walked inside together. The factory was a huge, dark space filled with shadows and unsettling echoes. Every step we took sounded as loud as a gunshot. Dario Centuri, a voice boomed from all around us. The man who thinks rules do not apply to him. You came. Where is she? Dario's hand found mine and he squeezed it tight. Where is Gabriella? A spotlight flared to life, lighting up a far corner. Gabby was tied to a chair, a gag secured over her mouth. She was terrified, but she looked alive and uninjured. Gabby, I whispered, and I started to walk toward her. Dario held me back. Not yet, he murmured. A man stepped out from the darkness. He was old and looked tired, but his eyes were identical to Dario's. Hello, son. Dario went completely still. Impossible. You are dead. I saw you die. You saw me bleed. The man, Dario's father, offered a faint smile. But I was always difficult to kill. You should know that better than anyone. This is not real. Oh, this is very real. He moved next to Gabby and pressed a knife against her face. And now, it is time for you to repay me for what you did. For taking my empire, my name, and my entire legacy. You do not have a legacy. Dario's voice was cold and empty. You were a monster. I made sure of it. And yet, I have returned from the grave, and I am here to take back what belongs to me. The blade traced a line on Gabby's cheek. She whimpered behind the gag. I will start with the people you care about. Do not touch her. Or you will do what? His father laughed. Kill me again? I do not think so. Because if I die this time, she dies right along with me. My men have their orders. At the first sign of trouble, the slightest hint of a betrayal, your little sister-in-law will die screaming. What do you want? Everything you took from me. The businesses, the properties, the power. He pushed the knife harder. A thin line of blood welled up on Gabby's skin. And your life. But I can be a reasonable person, so I am going to offer you a choice. What choice? Your empire or the women you love? He gestured to Gabby, and then he gestured to me. Give me back everything that is mine, and they can both live. Refuse, and I will kill them both, right here where you stand. The silence in the factory was heavy. I could almost see the thoughts racing in Daario's mind as he searched for an escape. There is no way out of this one, son, his father said, as if he could read his mind. There is no clever trick, no rule for you to bend. This is just basic math. Which one is more important to you? Daario's grip on my hand tightened. Then he let go. Take it, he said. You can have it all. The organization, the territory, all of it. Just release them. Dario, no. I tried to protest. Be quiet. He refused to look at me. He could not. You have my word. I will sign it all over to you tonight. Just let them go. His father smirked. You went soft. Love made you weak. Maybe it did. Do we have a deal or not? We do. His father nodded to someone in the shadows. Let the sister go. A pair of rough hands untied Gabby and shoved her toward us. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Now let the girl go, Dario demanded. Well, about that. His father's smile turned cruel. I lied. The gunshot exploded like thunder in the cavernous room. Dario collapsed. No! The scream ripped from my lungs. He fell to his knees as a dark red stain spread across his shirt. His father stood over him, holding a pistol that was still smoking. Did you really think I would let you live? He laughed. Not after what you did to me. I spent years planning this comeback. The business was never the prize. I wanted revenge. Daario coughed, and blood spilled from his lips. He looked at me, the light already fading from his eyes. Run, he whispered. The factory erupted into chaos. Marco and the others stormed in, their weapons firing. His father's men returned fire. The massive space became a war zone. I pulled Gabby down to the concrete floor as bullets screamed through the air. Through the smoke and the shouting, I saw Dario crawling, trying to get to us. He was still moving, but barely. Ravenna, he gasped, reaching a hand toward me. I am so sorry. I am so very sorry. Do not you dare die on me. I scrambled to his side, pressing my hands against the wound. Red soaked through my fingers instantly. There was so much blood. Stay with me. Please, you must stay with me. I love you, he choked out. I have always loved you, from the very first night. I love you too. And that is why you cannot go. You cannot. His eyelids began to close. No, Daario. Marco appeared from nowhere, lifting Daario as if he weighed nothing. We have to leave. Now. He carried him toward the only exit. I grabbed Gabby's hand and we ran. The factory exploded behind us, a massive fireball lighting up the darkness. We made it to the cars. Marco carefully set Daario in the back, then drove like hell itself was chasing us. A hospital, I begged. He needs a real doctor. Impossible. They ask too many questions. Marco's face was a grim mask. I know someone. A doctor who stays quiet. She can help him. I held Dario's head in my lap, my gaze locked on the faint rise and fall of his chest. Do not leave me, I whispered, my tears falling on his face. Please do not leave me. I cannot do this without you. I need you. Please. For just a second, his eyes flickered open. Little flower, he breathed. I told you I would break the rules. And then he was still. Dario's life stopped at 11:47 p.m. His heart did not beat for 43 seconds. I know the exact time because I counted every single one. The private doctor, a woman named Sophia with steady hands and eyes that held no judgment, spent 3 hours bringing him back to us. I fell apart completely, and Gabby held me up. Marco was a statue by the door, his sorrow silent and immense. My breathing stopped when Sophia finally came out of the temporary operating room, her scrubs dark with his blood. "He is alive," she said. My world went black. Dario opened his eyes 3 days later. I was right there. I had not left his side, sleeping in a chair and holding his hand, trying to pull him back with my own will. "Ravina!" His voice was a wrecked, painful sound. "You are real. I am real." I raised his hand to my lips. "You scared me. I am sorry." He tried to smile, but it failed. Dying was not part of the plan. "You did not die. It was close enough." He looked around the small, hidden apartment Sophia used to care for patients. "My father?" Marco took care of it. He was in the factory during the explosion. A storm of emotions crossed Dario's face. Relief, sadness, and then closure. "Good. Gabby is safe. She is here with us. We have had a chance to talk. She does not hate you anymore. It is hard to despise someone who almost died for you." Dario closed his eyes. "I did not save her. I walked straight into their trap. You walked into that trap for me, for both of us." I carefully climbed onto the bed, mindful of his injuries. "You were willing to give up everything for me. It was not enough. It was everything." I framed his face with my hands. "You loved me enough to watch your empire, your power, everything you built, turn to ash." "That is everything, Dario. For 43 seconds, you were gone." So he did remember it. The black void, the nothing. But I came back. Still not good enough. His hand found my waist, his touch soft despite his weakness. "I need to be stronger, smarter, no more mistakes. There will always be enemies who want to hurt us. Then I will eliminate every last one of them." He opened his eyes, and the fire in them stole my breath. "Anyone who threatens you, anyone who even thinks about hurting you, I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone take you from me again." A promise like that should have made me afraid. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Then I guess we are both lost," I whispered. "We were lost from the start. Little flower." He kissed me so gently, like I might break. I kissed him back with all my strength. "I am not fragile." "I know. You held on to my soul when my body quit. There is nothing fragile about that." Over the next week, Dario's recovery was painful and slow, but he was healing. And as his strength returned, he began to rebuild his world. Marco found the men who were still loyal, soldiers who had been waiting for a chance to strike back at the old system run by Dario's father. Together, they dismantled what was left of the Ghost's empire. My friendship with Gabby became stronger. She saw how Dario's eyes never left me, how he touched me like I was precious, even when he could barely move. She heard him calling my name when nightmares woke him. "Do you really love him?" she asked me late one night. "Yes." "And he loves you?" "Yes." "Then I suppose I have to learn to accept it." She hugged me. "Just promise me you will be safe. This world is not kind to women like us. I know, but you are staying. I am staying." On day 7, Dario walked. On day 8, he made plans. On day 9, he was strong enough to kill again. On the 10th day, he took me to a private room and locked the door. "I have a gift for you." He held out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "Dario, this is happening so fast." "I know this is insane," he said. "But I was dead, Ravina. I was gone, and I came back. And in those 43 seconds of darkness, all I could think was that I never made you mine. Not officially." He opened the box. A ring with a black diamond rested inside. It was beautiful and dark and perfect. "Marry me," he asked, "not because it makes sense, and not because it is smart. Marry me because I love you, and I am a selfish man, and I need the entire world to know you are with me." My brain screamed that it was too soon, that we barely knew each other, that I should be rational. Yes. He slipped the perfect ring on my finger. He kissed me like a man who had been brought back from the dead. "Mine," he whispered against my lips. "Yours," I promised back. He was gentle with me when we made love, even though I could see a wild hunger in his eyes. He was careful with his recovering body, yet he was consumed by a desperate need for me. Later, tangled together in the sheets, he told me his story. "My father used to beat me when I was a boy. He said I would never be strong enough for anyone to love. He claimed I was born broken, too weak for this world." His fingers drew lazy circles on my skin. I have spent every moment since that day proving him wrong. I built an empire. I became a monster. I made sure no one ever saw me as weak. You are not weak. But for you, I am. He tilted my chin up gently. You are my weakness, Ravina. You are the only one I have. Instead of fighting it, I am choosing to embrace it. Loving you makes me deadlier than I have ever been. How is that possible? Because now I have something to kill for. And I finally have something to die for. His smile was that of a predator. My father thought love would make me soft. He was wrong. Love made me a god. Then we are both gods. Yes, he murmured, kissing me again. Kissing. But we are gods who will rule side by side. That night, he laid out his new vision for me. He described how he would rebuild everything, only bigger and stronger than it was before. He would make our safety absolute. I helped him draw up the plans. I was not the terrified girl from the alley anymore. I was Dario Centuri's queen. And a queen does not just stand beside her king, she helps him conquer. Our wedding was on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. The ceremony was intimate and private. Only Marco, Gabby, Sophia, and a handful of Dario's most trusted men were there. I wore a white dress, and Dario was in a black suit. The symbolism was lost on no one. "I never thought I would see this," Marco said, standing next to Dario as his best man. "You, settling down. I am not settling down." Dario's eyes were locked on me as I walked toward him. "I am taking what is mine." The service was short. Dario had written his own vows. "Ravenna Fior," he started, taking my hands. "I could promise to protect you, to cherish you, and to love you for the rest of my life. But you know all of that already. So I will promise you the truth. I am a monster. I am a killer. My hands are covered in blood and my soul is black. I will never be a good man. I will never be gentle. But I will be yours, always, without a single doubt. And anyone who dares to come between us will learn exactly how monstrous I can be." The priest looked nervous. Gabby seemed worried. I just smiled. "Dario Santo," I said, "I could promise to be a good wife, to be obedient and meek, but we both know that would be a lie. So let me promise you this. I see your darkness, and I am not afraid. I see your demons, and I will help you feed them. I will stand with you through violence and chaos. My love for you will not end until the world does, which, knowing us, could be any day now." Dario's laugh echoed across the cliffside. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest said quickly, as if he could not wait to escape. "You may." Dario was already kissing me before the man finished. It was a deep, possessive kiss that sealed his ownership. When we broke apart, I was his wife, and he was my husband. The reception was at Dario's penthouse. He wanted to return to the city and reclaim his territory. "We are done hiding," he had told me. "Let them all see us. Let them understand." So we walked into the penthouse like we owned the world, because in that moment, we did. Our enemies were gone. Our territories were safe. Dario's empire was stronger than ever, and I was at its heart. During the party, Gabby pulled me aside. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Yes, I really am." I looked across the room at Dario. He was talking to Marco, but his eyes kept finding mine. "I know this is not a normal life. I know most people would never understand. But he is everything to me. Then I am happy for you." She hugged me tightly. "Just promise me you will not lose yourself in his world." "I am not losing myself." I stepped back with a small smile. "I am just becoming someone new." As midnight approached, Dario led me to our bedroom. Finally, he growled, pinning me softly against the door. "I have wanted you all to myself the entire day. We are married now. You will have me all to yourself every day for the rest of our lives. That is not long enough." He kissed my neck. "I want every second, every breath, every beat of your heart." He was greedy and desperate. He undressed me slowly, with a reverence reserved for a sacred object. "You belong to me now," he whispered against my skin. "Legally, completely, forever. I was always yours. Now the world knows it." He carried me to the bed and made love to me as if he were branding his name onto my very soul. And maybe he was. Later, wrapped in his arms, he told me his final secret. "I saw something," he said. "In the 43 seconds I was dead. What did you see? It was you. And a little girl. She had your eyes and my smile. We were in a garden. You were laughing." He touched my cheek with a gentle hand. "I want that with you. A life that is separate from all the killing and the violence. Is that even possible for us? I will make it possible." His hands drifted down to my stomach. "I will burn down the world for anyone who stands in our way. I will build a new one from the ashes for you, for our family." You are talking about children. I am talking about everything. A life, a legacy, something that means more than territory and power. I kissed him. "Then let us build it together." 6 months later, I stood in a hospital bathroom staring at a pregnancy test. It was positive. Dario was in the middle of a meeting. I called Marco. "Bring him to me at once. This is critically important. The boss is in a meeting with the Calabrazzi family. It does not matter if he is meeting with the Pope. Bring him here immediately." Not 20 minutes later, Dario rushed into the room. Sheer panic was in his eyes. "What is wrong? Are you hurt? Did somebody do this to you?" I simply held the test out for him to look at. His eyes grew wide. "We are expecting a baby," I whispered. A beat of silence hung in the air. Then a laugh erupted from him that was honest, joyful, and completely free. "We are having a child." He pulled me into his arms and spun me around. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy about this?" "Happy." He placed me gently on my feet and cupped my face with trembling hands. "Ravina, I am absolutely terrified. I feel completely in over my head, and I have never been more joyful in my entire wretched life." My own tears started to fall. "I suspected you might feel that way. I was not certain if you were ready for this. I have been ready from the first moment you agreed to be mine." He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against my stomach. "Hello, little one. Your father is a terrible man, but for you, I will be a hero. I promise you that." I ran my fingers through his hair. This fearsome man was brought to his knees by the hope of a new beginning. What if they use our child as a target? I spoke the fear that had consumed me since I saw those 2 lines. What if your enemies decide to come after us? In that case, I will eliminate every single one of them. He looked up at me, and the love in his expression was matched only by the promise of violence. "Every last one. I will make this world safe for you and our child, even if I must paint the streets red to achieve it." "Dario, this is serious." He stood up and pulled me into a tight embrace. "The compromises are over. We will no longer obey rules written by other men. Our child will grow up in a safe home, filled with affection and free from the nightmares that have always haunted me. How? By eliminating every single threat before it has a chance to materialize. His smile was terrifying. And our work begins tonight. He was not making an idle threat. Over the next 3 months, Dario methodically dismantled every competing organization. He did not use open warfare, but instead used strategic planning, acquiring their companies and giving them offers they could not possibly refuse. The few who did refuse just disappeared. I should have been appalled by his actions. I should have demanded that he stop, but I did not. I gave him my full support. I would sit in meetings with one hand on my growing belly, watching men twice my age avert their eyes when I smiled. I became fluent in the language of power, of fear, and of precise force. Gabby was horrified. "You are expecting a child. You should be resting. And do nothing? Not defend my own family." I met her gaze directly. "This is the world I belong to now, Gabby. I am no longer a defenseless girl. I am the wife of Dario, the mother to his heir, and I will take any measure required to keep us safe, even if it requires me to be like him. Especially if it requires me to be like him." She could not understand it. How was that possible? She had never felt real power, never known the satisfaction of seeing her foes bend to her will, and never loved someone so deeply she would become a monster for their sake. The baby was born on a stormy October night. Dario never left my side for the entire 23 hours of labor. He held on to my hand, whispered words of support, and looked at me as though I was performing a miracle. When our daughter finally entered the world, crying with rage at her own birth, Dario cried. "She is flawless," he murmured as a nurse placed her in his arms. "Just look at her, Ravina. She is utterly flawless." I had never seen him so tender. This man, who had ended lives without hesitation, was now cradling our daughter. He held her as if she were made of pure starlight. "What should her name be?" I asked. He looked at me, then down at our child, and finally at the storm that raged outside. "Luna," he said, "for the moon that brought me to you that very first night. Luna Santo. Luna." I repeated the name out loud. It was perfect. "Hello, Luna. Welcome to this magnificent and brutal world that we inhabit." Her tiny hand wrapped around Dario's finger, and in that moment, I watched my husband, the man who defied every rule, the monster, the king of Naples' criminal world, completely surrender. "I will give you anything you ever ask for," he vowed to her. "The entire world, the stars themselves, whatever your heart desires." "Perhaps you could start with a college savings fund," I teased, exhausted but full of happiness. "A college fund, an empire, they are one and the same." He kissed Luna's forehead, and then he kissed my own. "Thank you for giving this to me, for bringing her to me, for staying by my side despite the man I am. I would pick you 1,000 times over, even with full knowledge of what I have done, especially because I have knowledge of what you have done." He smiled. "If that is the case, then we are hopelessly lost," joyfully. Luna's christening was the most significant event of the year. Every family from Naples attended. Some came to demonstrate their allegiance, while others were there to observe. They wanted to see if becoming a father had made Dario soft. They got their answer when Dario made his speech. "My daughter," he began, holding Luna as I stood beside him, "represents the beginning of a new era. A future not built on the mistakes of what came before, but on a foundation of family, of love, and of unwavering loyalty." His eyes scanned the entire crowd. "And anyone who so much as threatens her, or even thinks of using her as a piece in their games, will discover that fatherhood has not made me kind. It has made me utterly without mercy." The message was clear. If you brought harm to his family, you would not simply die. You would be made to wish for death. That night, long after the guests had departed, and Luna was sleeping soundly in her nursery, Dario joined me on the balcony overlooking Naples. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I was remembering that first night we met, in the alley behind your club." I leaned back into his embrace. It is impossible to believe this is my life, especially when I remember the girl I used to be. My story taught me one thing above all else. True power is the only thing that can keep you safe. But how I found that power is not the story you imagine. Do you regret any of it? I turned to look at him. Dario Centuri, you shattered every rule that defined my world. You brought me into a reality I never knew existed. You helped me find a strength, a fire, a ferocity I never knew I had. You did that on your own. I only created a space for you to become who you were meant to be. No, you gave me strength. I leaned in and kissed him. And I am never giving it back. Good. His hands rested on my waist. Because I need you beside me. I do not want you walking in my shadow. I want you standing as my equal, my queen, my everything. You are my world, he said with certainty. You walked into my life so fragile and pure. But now, you are feared, respected, and powerful. Is that what you wanted when you first saw me? No. He brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. I wanted to own you, to break you, and then to rebuild you as a creation of my own. But now I see that you were never meant to be broken. His smile was soft. You were meant to break me. And you did, little flower. You demolished every wall I ever built, shattered every principle I lived by, and gave me something I never thought I could have. What is that? A purpose beyond vengeance and control. He glanced toward the nursery. A family, a future, and a reason for hope. Tears welled in my eyes. I am making you soft. Never. But his kiss was gentle. I am only learning that some rules are meant to be rewritten. And you? You rewrote every single one of mine. 5 years later, Luna was sprinting across the garden. Her dark hair streamed out behind her as Marco chased her with a playful laugh. "Uncle Marco, you are too slow." "I am getting old, Piccolola," Marco called back with a wide smile. I watched them from the terrace, one hand resting on my round stomach. Our second child, a boy, was due in a month. Dario emerged from his office and his face broke into a smile when he saw me. "How are my 3 favorite people?" He kissed me before kneeling to kiss my belly. "Are you causing trouble in there, Figlio?" The baby kicked as if to answer. "He is definitely your son." I laughed. "Good. Luna will need a brother to look after her." "Luna does not need to be looked after." We began training her as soon as she could walk. True, our daughter could already detect a threat, read body language, and persuade adults twice her size to tell her things. She was her father's child in every way imaginable. Still, Dario stood and wrapped his arms around me. "I want them to have the things I never did. They should have each other, and a real family. They will have it." I relaxed into his hold. We have made sure of it. Naples had changed under Dario's control. It was less savage and more strategic. He had converted most of the organization into legitimate companies, keeping only the most profitable of the old dealings. He had kept his promise and built a world where our children could have a safe upbringing. "Mama, Papa," Luna ran to us, catching her breath. "Uncle Marco said I can start learning to shoot next year. Please, can I do it?" Dario and I shared a look. "We will talk about it," Dario said. "That means yes." Luna hugged us both and then ran off again. "She is so much like you," I remarked. "She is perfect." Dario's hand closed over mine. "They both will be perfect." "Are you happy?" I asked. "Truly, I know you gave up a lot. The power, the fear, the control. I sacrificed nothing." He turned me to face him directly. "I gained everything. I have a wife who is not afraid to challenge me. I have children who give me a reason to live. I have a life worth living, not just surviving. Even when you disagree with me during meetings." "Especially then," he smirked. Watching you completely destroy a rival family's proposal while 7 months pregnant was the most attractive thing I have ever seen. I laughed. You are crazy. I am in love. There is a difference. Is there, with you? No. He gave me a long, deep kiss. With you, love and insanity feel the same, and I would never want it any other way. That night, long after Luna was asleep and the house was quiet, Dario and I were in the nursery we had prepared for our son. What should we name him? I asked. Dario was quiet for a second. Marco, to honor the man who saved my life and has protected our family for so long. Marco Santori. I spoke the name aloud. I like how it sounds. He will hate it. It is too much to live up to. Then he will live up to it, just like his father did. Dario pulled me close, and we stood together in the dark room, bathed in the soft glow of star-shaped nightlights. I love you, he whispered. More than control, more than my empire, more than my own life. I know. I kissed him. You prove that to me every single day. Do I? You changed the rules for me, remember? You let go of everything you thought was important, and you found what truly matters. And what is that? This? I gestured around the nursery, toward our home, and the life we built together. Family, love, a future based on something more than terror. You are making me sound like a hero. You are not a hero. I smiled. You are still a monster. You are still dangerous. You are still the man who would burn the world down to keep us safe. You are damn right I would. But you are our monster, and that is what makes all the difference. He kissed me again, this time with more fire. Come to bed, Mrs. Santori, before I decide I want to take you right here. You are insatiable. Only for you. We walked out of the nursery, our hands joined together. The stars on our ceiling cast a soft light on the crib. It was still empty, but it would soon hold our son. He was our family and our future. He was our everything, created from blood and darkness, held together by a love that had conquered every challenge. I first walked into Dario's world 7 years before. I was trembling, innocent, and completely terrified. Now I stood beside him as his equal. I was feared and respected. I was powerful. I had never felt so alive. 10 years later, I stood at a window in our villa. We no longer lived in the penthouse. This was a huge estate on the coast. Here, our children could play without limits. They could watch the setting sun turn the Mediterranean to gold. Luna was now 16. She was beautiful and brilliant. She was already getting attention from boys. They had no idea she could kill them in 6 different ways. Dario had forbidden her to date until she was 30. She negotiated with him and brought the age down to 18. Marco Jr., who we call Mark, was 9 years old. He had his father's intelligence but a gentle heart that reminded me of Gabby. He dreamed of being a doctor. Dario was torn between feeling proud and feeling disappointed. Our youngest child was Sophia. She was 5 and named for the doctor who saved Dario. She was wild, fearless, and her father's secret favorite. You are thinking too loud, Dario said from right behind me. He was older now, with some silver in his hair, but he was still a dangerously handsome man. Just reminiscing. About what? Everything. The alley, our deal, that first kiss. I turned in his arms to face him. Look at how far we have come. He kissed my forehead and corrected me. Look at how far you have come. I was always a monster. You became a queen. We became a team, the deadliest team Naples has ever seen. His smile was full of pride. Now, the families in Rome are even afraid of the Santoris. Good. My bloodthirsty wife. He nipped gently at my neck. You are still as fierce as the day I met you. You would not want me any other way. True. We heard Luna's voice from downstairs. Mama, Papa, Mark will not let me practice throwing my knives in the house. That is because you almost hit me last time, Mark yelled back. I missed on purpose. Children, I called down. Take it outside. Both of you, right now. They complained, but they obeyed. Sophia appeared in the doorway, holding a stuffed bear. Mama, Papa, can you tell us the story? Which story, princess? Dario asked, scooping her into his arms. The one about how you met. When Mama said she had never been touched, and you smiled and broke all the rules. I laughed. You love that story. It is romantic, Sophia said with certainty. It is like a fairy tale, but with more killing. That is one way to look at it, Dario said. He carried her to the bed. I went to them, lying next to my husband, while our daughter got comfortable between us. Once upon a time, I began, there was a girl who did not know she was brave, and a man who did not know he could love. And they met in an alley, Sophia added. They did. And the man looked at the girl and knew she would change everything. Did you know, Papa? Sophia asked. Did you know Mama would change everything? Dario looked at me. After all these years, the fire in his eyes still made my heart race. I knew, he said softly, that she was different. I knew she was special. I knew she was mine. And I knew right then that I would break every rule to keep her. And did you? Every single one. He kissed the hand that wore his black diamond ring. And I have never regretted it for one moment. Even when she argues with you, Sophia giggled. Especially when she shows my fire. A smile formed on my lips as I rested my head on his shoulder. Some people might call this a happy ending. No, Dario corrected me. He said we lived dangerously ever after. For people like us, that is much better. Between us, Sophia fell asleep. Her dreams were filled with dark alleys, broken rules, and a love that burned brighter than any shadow. Dario and I just stayed there. Our arms were around our daughter and around each other. He whispered, "Thank you." I asked him for what? For walking into that alley, for taking my deal, for loving a monster. I whispered back, "Thank you." For seeing who I really was, for wanting me, for changing all the rules. I would do it all again. And so would I. We fell asleep just like that. He was the monster, and I was his queen. He was the man who broke the rules, and I was the woman who finally broke him. Below us, Naples glittered like a sea of stars. It was our city. It was our kingdom. It was our future, made from blood and fire, and held by a love that went through hell and came back stronger. It all began 7 years ago. 4 simple words changed my entire life. No one has ever touched me. Dario had smiled then. His voice was a low whisper. Then I will be the first, the last, the only one. He kept that promise, and I kept mine, to stand by his side, to give him my heart, to rule with him in both shadow and light, until death do us part. And maybe not even then. The end. Thank you for journeying through the darkness with Ravenna and Dario. Their path from a wet alley to a throne built on blood and loyalty reveals a deep truth. Sometimes the most important rules are the ones we break for love. If their story gripped your heart, took your breath, and made you fall in love with dark romance again, please press the like button. Subscribe for more stories where love is not safe, it is a raging fire. And leave a comment below. Tell me which moment you will not forget. Was it their first kiss in the elevator? The time Dario faced a bullet without flinching? The family they built from the ashes? Your interaction is what gives these stories their power. Share this video with anyone who needs a dark romance. Share it with anyone who knows that Mafia kings and queens do not need to be rescued. They only need to claim their crowns. Until we meet again, remember to live with danger. Remember to love with passion. And always remember that the greatest stories are born where darkness and desire become one. Go on and subscribe, like, and comment. I will see you in the next Forbidden Tale.